What's up, guys, and welcome back to I Coach Nutrition Radio. Guys, today I have a super exciting podcast. Bring in somebody that I've recently found through the social media worlds of Instagram, and excited to be able to ask him some questions, kind of dive into the world of our world here, and be able to provide as much value as possible. Because I think he's somebody that I've recently kind of run into on the Instagram world, and I've enjoyed all the Twitter posts. I've enjoyed all the captions, and really just all the posts in general. And I think that he's somebody that's going to really provide a lot of value to the I Coach Nutrition community. So without further ado, Andrew, what's up, my man? How are you?
Hey, I'm great. I'm pleased to be here. Grateful that you reached out and wanted me to come on.
I love it, man. I love how just like calm, chill, and relaxed demeanor you have there. I
Oh, not always.
Not always. Well, I'm sure as a personal trainer there, and kind of getting into the streak training and all that. And you yourself, I'm sure, just kind of being in that world. Yeah, you not always, but at least in your demeanor in terms of like, when I first reached out with the Instagram message, kind of like the little voice memo back, like you just seem like a calm, chill, relaxed type of guy. So I appreciate that.
Many of my really close friends who know me a long time hear you describe me that way. They're going to be confused and think that you've made a terrible mistake. Uh, Being a disagreeable, classic type A redhead, um, you over time, because again, I'm 42, right? So I'm a little older than some of the generation that are coming up through the industry. You learn to gain control of some of the more impulsive, reactionary, thoughts and attitudes. And you mentioned social media, right? And we connected. I'm very thoughtful and deliberate in how I engage on social media. Now, it's not false, it's not fake, it's not a misrepresentation of me. It's an evolution of being a more thoughtful human being. We live in a world, social media being reflective of it, that is deeply polarized. We won't go near politics, but nutrition. You're in the nutrition world. Have you ever looked at the keto hashtag lately, or carnivore, or veganism? And people, they seek belonging in these tribes, and nutrition fills a lot of that void, that desire to belong. And so, if I'm talking about nutrition on social media, I try to be very thoughtful and nuanced, and avoid superlatives and extreme, black and white language on my media, because while yes, it's easy to say, oh, everybody's offended by everything. I mean, I'm not particularly interested in offending people out of shock value to gain eyes and ears on what I'm doing. I actually really want to make someone's life better. I want to share thoughts that change the way they think about things, give them useful information and tools to make changes, so that way they are healthier, that they are happier, their physical and emotional well-being. So that's what I've worked deliberately at for a very long time, to yeah, be a little bit more measured and thoughtful in how I respond and interact with other people.
Well, I mean, I think it's an evolution, right? It's an evolution as a coach, right? I mean, you could probably agree when you first started, right? I mean, I know when I was 18 years old, when I first started at 24 Hour Fitness, I was definitely a lot more reactive to things, even with my own family and trying to help my own family. And I learned very quickly as to, okay, maybe I going about it in the way that I did was not the best way, and here's how I do better going forward. So yeah, I think it's definitely an evolution of coaching and becoming a better coach as you start to learn more and more and more, and really just learn more about people, right? I mean, everybody's so different, and it's so easy to like get a degree or get a certification or whatever, and fit people into like a little like cookie cutter box there, but it's not like that. Like everybody's so different. I mean, that's where like I coach stem from, is like this idea of like everybody's different. Like individualized coaching is extremely important, whether it be with training or nutrition or whatever.
Yeah, no, nothing in our world is one size fits all. And I work with people that range from as young as 15 to as old as 70. And I've got a 15-year-old who, he wants to get stronger, but he has this emotional reactionary will to restrict his calories because he wants abs. And there's something that got in his head a long time ago about how like gaining body fat's bad, and I understand where it comes from. And balancing that with the knowledge that, hey, he needs to eat more food to build muscle and strength. But underpinning that, something I'm not directly qualified to deal with, is there is some, disordered eating thinking going on there. So there's certain things I can talk about, and there's certain, like if someone has a full-blown eating disorder, we know that we refer that to registered dietitian, someone with a formal education, or you know, um, psychologist or whatnot. But if I can help at least with the healthy relationship with food for that 15-year-old, then I'm going to set him up for a long path of good. Now, I got a couple 70-year-old guys, and the main thing with those guys is keeping them strong, giving them a robust array of skills and strength for what they're facing now, which is that point in their life where they're at more risk of, say, a fall, or one of them literally has said to me, I'm going to train him until he's dead. Well, my job is to keep him alive as long as possible. And he's featured prominently on my social media. If anybody sees him, his name is Larry. And, he's got this grizzled Santa sort of thing going on, but he's actually a sweet, wonderful guy. Everybody really loves him and cheers for him. And then I've got, sorry, something popped up my screen. I've got everything in between. And that everything in between is a really robust array of interesting people that something that applies to one absolutely would probably be disastrous to another. You probably know all too well in the nutrition world that one person can track calories, whereas it could be really dangerous and obsessive for another person. A lot of people probably do well on habit-based nutrition. Some people need to be eased in one habit at a time, and other people can realistically go all in and make a major commitment to wholesale lifestyle change. We just have to know which applies to each person best.
Man, that's the beauty of coaching, right? Meeting people where they are, and helping to take them to where they want to be. I mean, I love that, and I love that you work with so many different type of people, because that's something that I do as well, and it's something that I maybe not as much now, but in the past struggled with, as to like, because you hear, right, with marketing and all this is like, oh, you need to niche down, right? And not to make this into a business podcast or anything, but like, I just don't think that's true. I truly enjoy working with a whole bunch of different type of people. And I think great coaches should be able to work with a whole bunch of different type of people, because at the end of the day, they are humans at which we are working with. And whether they're 17 or 70, like, there's value that us as a coach can definitely provide to them. So I love that, man.
I agree on the niche thing too. And for anybody who, a lot of my audience are personal trainers, coaches who are a bit newer to the business, or kind of up and coming. So I'll share a lot of little insights in a business, brand, all that sort of stuff. Even though I don't have any sort of formal service or mentorship where I do that, I'm not a business coach, right? So with niching, I think there's a lot of pressure. Some people say, oh, you have to have a niche. Niching early probably closes more doors to you than it opens to you. I think, and I've talked about this with Pete Dupuis. He was my most recent podcast guest on mine. Pete understands this stuff really well. Literally, his podcast is called Niched. But Pete's put it in a way that with Cressy Sports Performance, if anybody's familiar with it, they deal with the best baseball players, in particular pitchers in the world. They're experts at shoulder mechanics. They train a lot of young pitchers coming up through. There's great demand for their services. And if you are the best in the world at something like athletic performance, then people reasonably assume you're also going to be pretty damn good at fat loss and just general strength. And I had a conversation with a young trainer who's just starting out in the business, really, really sweet, who is looking at niching in the postpartum space. And I think that's a good space to be. But I don't think you want to exclusively position yourself in that space to the exclusion of being a general health, wellness, fat loss coach if you want to be, because people will see that and go, especially potential male clientele. They won't even consider, a female coach who's, postpartum. Maybe that's what she wants. Maybe that's all she wants is female clients. But I think that you want to, if you're going to niche, number one, you don't have to have only a single niche. You might still be best off exploring a varied array of experience, because that's going to be valuable as a trainer anyway. And then over time, if you find that you really love a particular space and you have a lot of clientele in that space, and it seems to be a source of a lot of referrals, it's something that just works really well for you, then I think naturally you can make that niche fit really well. I think if you try to just choose, I'm going to be the person who trains, 28-year-old doctors who are burnt out, blah, 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 coming out of med school, this sort of thing. Well, first of all, do you have any experience in that space? Or did you just arbitrarily choose a category because you don't know anybody else who's in it? I don't think that's particularly useful.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. I agree. I think that it's unfortunately a lot of the new coaches that are starting in the space, and I think there's a lot of them that are like trying to go online before they're ever even in person. They're seeking out these coaches, these business coaches, and they're pushing, niche down, and so it's again, I could probably rant on that all day, as I'm sure you could, but bringing it back here, the main point that I wanted to talk about, right? So Andrew, I have a lot of clients that I work with, and the majority of my clients that I work with are women. Okay. And as I think that strength training is something that, I mean, call it the excuse. It's boring. I like the group classes better, whatever it is, right? But strength training is something that's so undervalued, right? Like I have so many clients that do CrossFit, Orange Theory, F45, the group boot camp classes, whatever, Camp Gladiator, whatever they're called, right? And there's such a lack for strength training in terms of like, yes, maybe they're doing resistance training, but like, I mean, come on, they're lifting 5 pound dumbbells, 10 pound dumbbells or something, right? Like, I mean, you're lifting, your child weighs more than that. Come on, Susan, you know what I mean? And so I've been pushing this, for years and years and years. And I think that more and more people are starting to understand the importance of it. But like you made a post, you said strength train, if not for yourself today, but as an act of generosity and love for your future self. Picture your older future self, someone who is entirely at the mercy of the decisions you make today. Strength train to give your future self a better quality of life. And I saw that post and I was like, man, like the little emoji where the hands are together. I was like, ah. So what are your thoughts on this, man? Why is strength training important for everybody?
All right, big broad concept. So I'll start with where that concept comes from. The whole idea of picturing a future self is kind of rooted in finance and motivating people to save. So that's where I think its origins are, but it applies equally to fitness. So if you humans are naturally impulsive, we tend to seek, quick gratification, and we often make a lot of decisions that are short-sighted. That's why we have, an obesity epidemic. That's why we have, issues with gambling and addiction and various other problems of that nature. So we see that future far off time frame as not something that we have any sort of like tangible relationship with. So instead, if you actually visualize, picture you as an older person, as a person who, as I put it, is vulnerable to, at the mercy of your decisions today, you are, and there's research to support this, far more likely to make longer viewed decisions and kinder decisions to do something positive for that future self. It's like, you hear about, 1,000, say 1 million children starving in Africa, and it's a statistic, and, people like, okay, but you see the image of one sick child on World Vision on television, and that'll pull on your heartstrings, and you're far more likely, and there's a reason why those commercials are structured that way. So there's a lesson in this. If we want to make a difference in changing people's lives and getting them to change their behavior, well, for the future self, we'll humanize that future self, create this image of that person. So we have that. Now, obviously, strength training yields a massive array of benefits. I hope most people know this, but we will have a improved blood pressure, improved blood sugar, and that ties directly in heart disease and diabetes, two of the greatest killers in our society, right? And while I don't want to riff on COVID too much, but we also know that those two things are massively disproportionately killing people who contract COVID. So, there are major risk factors for that. It's worsening the impact of the COVID pandemic. So what else do we benefit from? We get greater bone mineral density. You mentioned that, especially with our older clients and especially with women. They're more vulnerable to bone mineral loss. So as we get older, what happens? We're at greater risk of fall injuries. If you break a femur or your pelvis, you are at far greater risk of, dying sooner than someone who hasn't suffered that sort of condition, right? That is a very, very serious problem, especially as you get into 60 or 70 or 80 plus, right? We don't recover as well there. So that's very life altering stuff. We can head that off by strength training. And there's another aspect to it too that I also had a post about recently. I mean, there's all these health benefits that we know about, but think about the process of strength training, developing the habits. I hope everybody listening has done that. And then you can probably correlate the improvement in the quality of your career, relationships, and various other aspects of your life that you can tie back to strength training as a linchpin habit or behavior. I certainly can say that's true. My career is a result of getting involved in weightlifting, strength training, bodybuilding style stuff. Probably it really took off about 18 years ago. I dabbled before that. I grew up athletic, but so if we look at the cascading positives that come from this attitude and this mastery, this habit formation of the discipline to consistently strength train, we are far more likely to eat better. It's a linchpin behavior that tends to make nutrition just better. I have a post due tomorrow on this very topic. And again, you are far more likely just to develop better lifestyle habits across the board on average. It's not going to be the solution to everything. We know that a lot of people who are, consistent in gyms still struggle with various aspects of everyday life stuff, but it will have a positive cascading effect on your everyday.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I look into it, right? And there's all these different type of people, right? There's some people that I see, and they're hitting the gym, they're doing the CrossFit, they're doing the Orange Theory, the F45, the Camp Gladiator, and they're doing it like 4, 5, 6 days a week, and like maybe it's a situation where they're like severely restricting calories as well, and like they're sitting here and they're doing all this exercise. Or maybe I see the people that just aren't doing any strength training at all. But I know, and this is one thing that Susan brought up on the podcast that I did with her, as you know, as I know you had her on as well, is that like, you can look at her before and after picture and what happened from 55 to 60, which is, mind blowing there. But it's like what she said in terms of what it did for her outside of the gym. She's like, I wish my parents could have seen me become an entrepreneur, start my own business and all that. It's like the strength I got from being in the gym and what that did for me in other areas of my life was amazing. And I think that, especially in the culture that we live in, right? I mean, I you know, I don't have a daughter, I have a son, but hoping for a daughter here soon. But that's one thing I want to empower into my daughter. And it's something that I really seek to empower into all the women that I work with, is like strong is beautiful, right? Like being strong gives you confidence. It gives you way more than just losing weight or like changing your body comp or whatever. Like it does so much more for you than that. And it's one of those things where you don't really realize it until it actually starts happening. So I think it's such an invaluable piece, and coming from maybe the relationships that our moms and their moms had with strength training, like, we're battling a cultural norm here, right? And it's gotta shift. We've got to empower women more. And I think like Girls Gone Strong, like I think I love their movement that they've kind of like brought up there. You've heard of Girls Gone Strong, right?
Yep, I'm familiar with them.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just think that it's a really cool thing to see. I mean, if I think about like one of your clients, right? Like you mentioned, you have a client that's 70 years old, right? Like why does he comes into you and trains with you? Like why? I mean, there's plenty of 70-year-olds out there that maybe are like, you know what? Like I'm done. Like what's the point, right?
Let's circle back to that because I want to take your thought about women in the industry a little further. I think there's something very valuable to say here. There are a lot of really great people out there. I love, Sohee Lee. I promote Sohee a lot. Jill Coleman. If someone's dealing with, addiction-based behavior, my friend Kelly Coffey is a really wonderful resource for that. And you mentioned Susan Niebergall. So Susan and I talked. Susan is 60 and shredded as hell. She looks phenomenal. And we did talk on the podcast about why she feels very isolated at her age, especially as a woman in the industry. And the reason is that, women 40 years ago as 20-year-olds weren't entering strength and conditioning. It just wasn't a viable option, right? It's societal norms. That's changing. Now we have great people like, if anyone's familiar with my friend Siobhan Fagan, who is just wonderful. She doesn't have a monstrous brand, but she's written an article for T Nation. She writes for bodybuilding.com and other major magazines. You get people like her emerging. They will age into eventually being those older female strength coaches. But Susan sort of found it later in life. So that's why she's sort of isolated in there. Over time, more and more and more of these great people will emerge and their brands will stand out more. I believe it's really important that we do everything we can to support them. And I think also sometimes, and I don't wish to speak for women, but I think women often will get drawn into spaces instead of strength coaching that are more traditionally normalized for them. A lot of women are in nutrition. A lot of women are in. I don't like maligning, kind of the influencer types or whatever, but often enough, it's easy enough to get drawn into the more, superficial imagery of building a social media brand, and that can be a appealing route for some women versus putting your head down and just doing, strength coaching work with young athletes or everyday people. So I think that stuff is really important to recognize, and I hope that everybody goes out and, if you're listening, is to take a look at some of the really great. And I mean, I mentioned Sohee Lee and Jill Coleman specifically because they're two really brilliant female entrepreneurs in our space. They're leaders, they're great role models, and I think that they're really important for where the future of our industry. So now going back to Larry and why he does it specifically, well, he's open about this, but he lost his wife about 4 years ago. And so he started training with a guy who's a friend of mine who was inspired to become a trainer because of me years ago, who eventually left the industry. And when Larry was ready to return to him, my friend referred him to me, and Larry and I hit it off. And he's been with me now about a year. And so he does want to maintain his physical and mental well-being. That's really it. He's a sturdily built man. He grew up on a farm and has worked in trades his whole life. He's now retired. So physically, he's quite strong. And in fact, when you watch a video of him moving and squatting and all sorts of stuff, most people look at this like he squats better than I do, right? He's got a below parallel squat. And I got him, doing heavy farmers carries across our turf area, and he can push a ton of weight on the sled. And I got him off his feet, off the machines, onto a lot of, the stuff that we would call like functional strength training, right? As much as the word functional gets whipped around and misused and bastardized, and people like to bitch about it, but it's a word. It's like tone. But what's also emerged is Larry and I really enjoy spending time together, and he values that relationship. But this is something that extends to all the clients I ever work with. And I think this is good advice for anyone who, is a personal trainer or strength coach, early in their career. You sometimes feel this pressure to just fill every moment with nutrition and technical training and all that stuff. A lot of your clients will keep coming because of their relationship with you long after they truly need you to coach and cue things, or they need to learn new stuff because you've expired that. They're coming in because they have the resources to do so. They value the accountability, but it's an hour or two a week or three, whatever it is, that they get to come and hang out with someone that they really enjoy spending time with. And if you invest in that experience with them as a person, I like listening to Larry's stories. He's a wise man. I mean, you'd expect that from someone who's, in their 70s, but he's wise, he's thoughtful, he's very intelligent, he's got a really great outlook on the world, he's kind and compassionate. And I find myself really enjoying that. It's same with my other 70-year-old client, Neil, who's a retired lawyer. Amazing human being, very, very intelligent, very good values. And he's usually my first appointment of the day when I train him. It is an appointment I always look forward to going into. And I want to enrich their lives. We also know now that loneliness and isolation is one of the biggest killers of people in general. It'll kill you quicker, and it'll deteriorate your quality of life a lot quicker. It'll certainly be very harmful to your, mental health and emotional well-being. So everybody, regardless of the age, does rely upon the quality of their relationships. And just because you're a personal trainer to someone does not mean you cannot be their friend. And we're not psychiatrists or certain other types of practitioners. We have to maintain that, that barrier. If anything, we probably benefit more from developing these good relationships. If anyone here, if you are familiar with Chad Landers, is a friend of mine who owns a gym in North Hollywood. Okay? If anyone watches Cobra Kai on Netflix, and I wish I could remember the lead's name, the blonde guy who was the kid, the bad guy kid in the original Karate Kid is now the protagonist. So they're friends, and he's his coach. So Chad is legendary for his long-term relationships with his clients. He features them all the time. He's had clients, he's been in the business, I think 26, 27 years now, and he's had some of his clients for most of that time. And after a certain point, there's not much more you're going to be able to show those people. They're showing up because they love to spend time with you. So never undervalue that particular thing. And ultimately, Larry knows this is good for his health, but I think he sees bigger than that. And it's a relationship that he values and knows that it's incredibly essential to his well-being.
Hmm. Wow. That's amazing, man. I think that that's something, especially as we're coming into Thanksgiving tomorrow, right? It's something that is beautiful, and that, human connection, building relationships, no different than this podcast and what we're doing right now, right? I mean, I think, like, as I told you before we even hit record here, I mean, I get so much out of this. I mean, and I probably get more out of this than maybe even the audience gets out of it, just because it's an opportunity to connect and to build relationships and to focus on the pillar of health that a lot of people maybe forget about, which is human connection, right? I mean, we talk about sleep, nutrition, fitness, and all that. Human connection is definitely a pillar of health as well. So I love
I'll,
that.
I'll add something to it too. We tend to look at this through the lens of the client, but I work long hours doing this, and I'm sure a lot of the coaches listening do too. If your audience is a lot of coaches, there has to be some. We also have to be able to enjoy the process and sustain our emotional well-being as we do this too, right? A lot of times trainers are a little too worried about burning out, and I do think they need to worry about not starving first. That's an important thing for people starting. But as you go into this, we have to be really conscious of our own well-being. Like, I do full-time coaching hours every week. I do some online training. I write an article for T Nation as often as I can get one. I'm currently writing for True Coach, a career article once a month. I have a weekly podcast. I've been a guest on a podcast once a week for months. And on top of that, the conference that Dean Somerset and I and the owner of Evolve Strength, where we contract, we didn't go forward with this year due to COVID. But there's that. That takes a little bit of effort sometimes. And then, trying to make sure I have 1.5 hours virtually daily for my own workouts, a full-time effort on growing social media, which I applied myself to this year, and then finding time to make sure I've got time for the girlfriend. I did like a little bit of downtime. I'm a prolific reader. Where the hell do you fit all that in? So if you're doing tons and tons of hours with your clients, if you can make that time you look forward to and something that recharges you versus drains you, you're going to maintain your ability to do this for a very long time at a very high level and something you love. I love spending time with the overwhelming majority of the clients I've ever had. Yes, there are exceptions to that. And as you get deeper into your career, the people who create too much stress for you, you will have to arrive at a point where you decide that's not worth it. And getting out of that loop of feeling like you're very dependent upon the clients that cause you, like the quote 20% that cause you 80% of the problems. Yes, you will eventually arrive at the point you realize that you are better off without those type of clients. But I also don't like the rhetoric of firing clients. I think we need to go above and beyond to do everything we can. And if someone just isn't a good fit, then in a professional manner, sever the relationship. Yeah, we really have to, we should invest in loving our interactions with the people we work with. I mean, why else are you doing this but to love spending the time with those people and improve their lives? I mean, some people like to joke, like, oh, you're in the wrong business if you want to make a lot of money. Trust me, I know a lot of people who do really financially well. This has treated me extremely well. But there are a lot of trainers who are struggling. They're very nervous, especially with the uncertainty of this year. And they do it because they love it, not because it's the best paycheck in the world. If you love it and you invest over the long term, trust me, you can make a really phenomenal paycheck out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and I've ran on into this probably maybe more this year than ever before, just with COVID over the last 10, 11 years here. But it's like the thing that I've always tried to define myself as with, in terms of being a coach is an empathetic problem solver, right? Meet the person with empathy, and you know, I can never begin to understand what that person's been through before we start working together. And for some people, it's not, it's very superficial. And for some people, it's super deep. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think that's the beauty in becoming a coach is like, I, I mean, you probably don't know anything about my story. I've shared it a lot, but my transformation was not through losing 50, 100 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever. It was through like transforming my life as to like, I was a drug addict and selling drugs and all of that, and like had to transform my life in that regard. And I think that it's really what has like allowed me to become so empathetic, and that like I'm an imperfect human being. You know, I know I don't want to put myself onto a pedestal, or for people to think that I'm perfect by any means, because I've struggled with a lot. My family, you know, and just from a genetic standpoint, like I'm not susceptible to living the life that I've lived, but I've had to make a lot of choices, and it's led me to where I am today. And I think that's no different for a lot of people that are trying to transform their life. You know, it doesn't have to be just the food or the weight loss or whatever. I mean, a lot of people are dealing with a lot of different things. And I think the accountability is there, but for people to just feel like they can hire a coach, somebody that is going to be on their team and is going to want to support them and help them to accomplish their goals, and just be, not just be a client, but become a friend, you know, like that's something I really, really tried to pride myself on, is like, I want to become a friend. This last weekend, one of my clients and I, he has a little boy the same age as my son, and we went out, we met up, we introduced the wives together, and you know, the little boys, and they played. Like, that's what human connection, the building relationships, like, yes, there's the coach and the client, but it's so much more than that, you know.
It is so much more than that. I mean, you think about, your experience, and I don't delve too much into this sort of stuff because, ah, you know, it's not quote part of my brand in a way that, again, I mentioned my friend Kelly Coffey, who's very, very open about, some of her really wild addiction type behaviors in her past. But I used to own a nightclub in Newfoundland, where I'm originally from, and that came with a certain lifestyle that really could get out of hand. And I walked away from that whole world. So yeah, I've had some experience in that realm, and I know that your life experience allows you to put yourself in more people's shoes when you're coaching your clients. Because I don't think people really like fitness robots as coaches, right? They're seeking empathy and humanity and someone that they can relate to. And because they're not client robots. I mean, I don't remember, outside of maybe one person who just was like a stone wall, but I don't remember anybody else I've ever trained in 10 years who is just a robot who didn't have complex, nuanced personal challenges, lifestyle stuff that they've gone through. I've definitely trained people who were battling drug addiction and alcohol addiction. I have definitely worked with people who were going through and still deal with mental health issues. One of my clients is a very good friend of mine. He has recently returned from the military, and that comes with some PTSD and other like physical and emotional health issues. So these our own experiences do, I think, make us a lot more relatable, and I think it's really important to enhancing the experience for anybody you're dealing with. And I know you've had that in your coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it definitely makes you a better coach. Not that you, I mean, I've never wished it upon anybody. It's not like you have to go through some bad, crazy experience or whatever. But, you know, I think back to me at 18 years old, like sitting in a jail cell, like not believing in God, and like, and like literally like praying and asking like for a second chance at life. Like I was facing 2 felonies and 7 misdemeanors and 2 years in prison. And I said, God, you know, I've been hurting a lot of people lately. Last 2 years, I was selling a lot of ecstasy. And I said, if you give me the second chance, I will dedicate the rest of my life to helping other people. And in that moment, call it whatever you want to call it, but the next morning I got out of jail, and literally, I'm proud to say, for the last 10, 11 years, I've dedicated the rest of my life to helping other people. And, you know, find your why. You know, you'll never work another day in your life if you enjoy what you're doing, whatever you want to call it. It's just that I know I get to wake up every day with an opportunity to help people. And when I help people, it's like it's kind of like Gary Vaynerchuk. You know, he talks about like it's like his oxygen, right? What he does is like his oxygen. And like I feel that in terms of like when I help people, when I get the text message, the Instagram message, whatever it may be, it's like, man, like in the lowest of lows, you get that message and you're like, you know what? I'm exactly where I need to be. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
It is our dopamine hit. And if anybody knows anything about dopamine and how the neurochemical science of all that stuff is, dopamine is a major driver of behavior. It's a reward based system that gets us to do more of a certain thing. And I agree, the good feeling of getting a message you know, if one of my police applicants, which I used to coach, we haven't had that going on a little while, you know, sends me a text saying, hey, I got in, which is a tough process to be accepted into, or just any number, or someone sends me a message about like how much weight they've lost or sustained, or I run into a client years after I coached recently and find that, you know, the young man is still in the gym doing really, really well. Those are dopamine hits that feel really great. So we also got to be careful about, you know, the social media stuff where we get hooked on that and that kind of dopamine stuff, which can go awry. I'm reading a book right now called The Craving Mind, which actually gets into the science. This stuff's really good stuff. But yeah, it's still dopamine reward system of feeling good about seeing other people doing well. And I think that's one of the best things we could possibly do. I think it's a reason why a lot of people in our world do it. I think a lot of people enter our world who maybe aren't suited for it and they find out pretty quickly it's not for them. And I think it's the best thing for those people to try it, but then leave quickly when they realize it isn't for them. But I really hope that anybody else, especially with a challenging year this year, who does love what they're doing and feels uncertain, that they hang on. And I think, as a side note, if you were able to survive this year, probably nothing's ever going to happen in our lifetime that will ever again be as bad as this. I'm praying for that, and you're going to be okay. If you hung tight, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, as somebody that's been doing this for 10, 11 years, I mean, you got to just, if you're new listening to this podcast as a trainer, as a coach, whatever, it's like, you've got to just know it's kind of a part of the job in a sense, right? Like you're going to have months that are really high. You're going to have months that are really low. I mean, there is a bit of a roller coaster ride when it comes to the industry in a sense. I mean, yes, maybe you would get to normalize that a little bit more and get more consistent and all of that as time goes on. But there are definitely highs and highs and lows. I mean, but I think that's where revenue can't be the only driving factor for you. You can't just be chasing the next dollar amount or you're going to get burnt out very, very quickly there. So, dude, Andrew, man, I could probably chat it up with you and ask questions all day, but I want to respect your time, man. But dude, where can everybody find you at? You've been really, really working hard with Instagram. I've been appreciating it. And I want everybody that's listening to be able to go and follow you and be able to kind of contribute to the growing audience and everything that you're working towards here. I think that, again, I appreciate the brands out there that like simplify nutrition and fitness. And because that's at the end of the day, I have a nutrition degree that I spent $60,000 on. Like, I kind of regret that sometimes, but I'm like, I don't ever talk about any of that stuff. Like, I don't ever talk about advanced macro and micronutrition, biochemistry. Like, so I appreciate people that kind of take, that are research-based, but take it and kind of simplify nutrition, simplify training, and really just like work to help toward, the majority of America as we're going through an obesity epidemic to get us through this. I mean, wouldn't it be beautiful if there was a day that came that we were no longer in an obesity epidemic anymore? I mean,
I think that's going to take some major fundamental shift in human behavior.
It might be in wishful, Andrew. It might be in
right. So you can find me at the hub of everything I've been doing now is Andrew Coates Fitness, COATES, on Instagram. That's the best thing. I am on Facebook. I use it a lot less. So if I get random ads, unless I actually know someone, I'm less likely to follow me on there. But you don't get a lot of organic reach when you follow people on Facebook. So connect with me on Instagram. And then I share my T Nation writing, any of my other published articles that go out through Instagram. I share my podcast through, my podcast is called the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. Just a play on words from a old Bruce Willis Die Hard 4 movie that I enjoy. And I couldn't believe it wasn't taken when I thought of it. I was like, shit, this is great. And I tend to talk a bit more about fitness industry, like success. It's definitely geared a little bit more towards like coaches. And again, despite the irony that I am not myself a business mentor, nor have any ambitions of doing so, but like we talked a little bit off air and you alluded to, there are really good people to learn fitness business from. Like friends of mine like Luca Hocevar, Pete Dupuis are just a couple of names. There's many, many more, right? But we also know there's a lot of people who are tarnishing the sort of the fitness business coach in our space. And quite frankly, just because the industry's been really good to me, I'd rather give back. So if you got coaches, follow me, shoot me messages. I actually want to hear from you. I'll message back every single time, to where if I can actually help you be more successful in your career, I can have a farther reaching impact than just the clients that are in front of me. It's a little way of giving back to an industry that in many ways has saved my life and given me a quality of life I probably couldn't have ever imagined. So Instagram, Andrew Coates Fitness, that's where it's at. Everything else hubs out from there.
Yeah, I love that. And just to validate that point, guys, when I first reached out to him, he sent me back a little voice message there, which I always appreciate, or the video message or whatever there. So very just Andrew, I want to thank you for your time, man, and appreciate just being in the space of social media, just somebody that's like a genuine, nice, kind human being. So I appreciate that.
Here's a thought. You know what? It's called social media, and we get caught up in the vanity metrics of followers and likes or whatnot. But the real, if you want to be successful at the social media side of stuff, it's engaging with people. I genuinely enjoy the experience of making someone's world better. And if it's a newer coach who has a question and I'm able to answer it, at least make them feel like there's someone there who cares, then I am virtually certain I have answered every single message that's ever been sent to me via social media. Outside of, I even answer the bullshit stuff you get about like, hey, do you want to, grow your Instagram, blah blah blah, and I just screw with those like spammers. Sometimes I just delete them, but any authentic message, I'll always respond to them because it's. I understand if someone has an account that's 300, 400, 500,000 or in the millions, you can't get back to people. But if you've had Jordan Syatt on recently, and Jordan's an amazing dude, and he actually genuinely tries. He's gone and given out his number before and spent an entire day on calls with different people he's trying to help. Jordan is a guy who loves this stuff and is really authentic, and he's built a massive engaged following as a result of it. If you want to be successful and your following is smallish, well, you have the time and the capacity to engage with everybody who wants to, and then you're going to build in dedicated followers. You're going to build in fans, as silly as that phrase sounds, that word sounds, have fans. But these are going to be people that will share your work. They'll introduce you to more people. I have had so many people who relentlessly, they'll share anything that I post, no matter how horrible it is. I look back and I'm like, oh man, that was terrible. No, I work tirelessly to make sure the quality of stuff I'm sharing is really, really good. But you get people who are like that, they're going to bring more people to your doorstep. And maybe some of those people will become clients. But at the very least, it'll help you with your goal if you want to grow a brand and a reputation in our world, which honestly I think is a very honorable thing. The more people you can positively affect, the better. Why else are we doing this?
That's it. That's it, my man. I love it. Well, dude, Andrew, it's been a pleasure being able to connect, my man. It's been a pleasure to be able to take this time that we had today, man. I'm excited for the podcast release here, and excited for the value that it'll bring to the followers. The clients I've been talking to, like I work with about like 35 like one-on-one clients, all online. And so I've been kind of talking you up here, and I'm excited for the podcast. They've been enjoying some of the posts that you've been making. It's so funny, the Twitter posts, man. They're just like so popular right now, like more so than anything else, I feel like. So
You know what?
I've been enjoying it.
Let's explain that for a second, right? And I've talked about this before on a few other podcasts. So if anyone's familiar, I'm guessing you're probably familiar with the hero's journey idea, where The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, the original trilogy, Hunger Games, and Harry Potter. They're all the same story arc, same story character archetypes. It's really the same plot. One of my favorite examples is how the movie, if you've seen Point Break, the original, not the shitty remake, and then you go and watch Fast and Furious 1. They're the same fucking movie. They actually, literally, it is explicit that Fast and Furious 1 is the same everything. It was repurposed. So there's an official relationship there. And people like things that are familiar, right? So these Twitter posts, you're confined to use a limited number of characters, which means people are more likely to read it. The Twitter post, because of its ubiquity and the fact that it's Twitter, turned into an image for Instagram, is a familiar thing that people plug into. I see a lot of people try to go different routes, and oftentimes I think those flop simply because it's not as familiar a format. If you listen to music, you'll notice that a lot of popular music that gets really, really big sounds kind of similar to each other. There's a same chorus verse like structure to songs. Whereas you get some sort of band, I'm a huge fan of Tool, right? Wearing a Tool shirt right now. And it's kind of on my social media. They're literally my favorite thing, but they don't write classic, normal signature song structures. So they're not for everybody. They actually do have a massive following just due to the fact that they're just incredible. But it took a lot for them to break that mold. Um, but most of this stuff is very familiar and recognizable patterns. But then you have to focus on great quality, like Harry Potter. Harry Potter are fucking amazing books. Anyone who just trivializes and thinks they're kids' books is completely missing the point of what's going on there. They're brilliant and they're fun. And you have to package, if you really want to reach a lot of eyeballs, something great quality. You work tirelessly to get better at the craft of doing it within a, a delivery vehicle, in this case, the social media, that is very accessible and familiar to people. And that is a very good strategy to get people to plug into it. The infographics a few years ago were huge. I mentioned Sohee Lee earlier. We talked about Jordan Syatt. You know, there was a period of time where they blew up their social media accounts. Spencer Nadolski was part of that wave, Carter Good, and there's a whole bunch more because they were in the forefront of sharing these really good infographics that had good ideas behind them. And then all of a sudden, this sort of thing caught on. So therefore, people just shared like crazy these popular infographics. Now they're so ubiquitous and generic that it's really hard to stand out. So that I don't think they're necessarily the same drivers for growth, but they're still popular. I think the Twitter thing will eventually mature to that point, but you're seeing more and more of it, sure. But then you distinguish yourself on the quality of your ideas, which I work on every single day.